Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Ketubot daf Kaf Vav. We actually made excellent progress with Ellie over the on Sunday, and we are currently at Tanya about 1, 2, 3, 4. Second, I'm not finding it. One last word on the line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down. So right over here. Okay. And so what have we been up to? So we have been discussing how one proves whether or not one is a Kohen, and in particular, whether one can be considered a full-fledged Kohen based on the fact that a particular family engages in certain Kohanic behavior. So along those lines, we're going to again pick up 8th line down, last word on the line, Tanya. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer. We learned in a brisa that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, "Kishem shetruma shchazka l'kahuna," just as receiving truma, and we will see that it means receiving truma in the by going out to the fields and to the storehouses to receive truma directly from the people. So that is an indication of one's legitimate kahuna status. So kach maser rishon chazka l'kahuna. So too is receiving Meiser Rishon. Now, as a reminder, let's just go through the Trumas and Maestros calendar, right? Or the Trumas and Maestros categories. So what you have is you begin with Truma. Truma is the 1/10. I'm sorry, the any percentage that you want, and generous is 1/40th. Beinonit is 1/50th, and the stingy is 1/60th that you give to the Kohanim. And that truma is only edible by Kohanim, and it requires the truma to be in a tahor state and the Kohen to be in a tahor state. And then you have Meiser Rishon. The Meiser Rishon is given to according to the Torah to the Leviim, and that's 1/10 of it. And then Trumas Maestros are given 1/10 of that 1/10 is given to the Kohanim by the Leviim. And then you have Meiser Sheni or Meiser Ani as another category. If it's Meiser Sheni in years 1, 2, 4, and 5, you bring it up to Yerushalayim. If it's Meiser Ani in years 3 and 6, so then you give it to the poor. Okay, so then, but as you see here, we're saying that receipt of Meiser Rishon somehow is going to establish the presumption of kahuna. And just to finish out that brisa, if one receives truma in connection with a court, so then that does not create any kind of presumption. We're going to explain what that means because that's a little confusing. So we'll get to it in a moment. But to begin with, the Gemara immediately asks, Meiser Rishon de Levihu. I don't understand. Meiser Rishon doesn't go to a Kohen, so how could it possibly be a presumption of kahuna? So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So it follows Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and we saw this back in Yevamot, near the end of Yevamot, where we said, Tanya Truma la Kohen, Meiser Rishon la Levi, right? So Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says that Truma goes to a Kohen and Meiser Rishon goes to a Levi. But Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Omer Meiser Rishon afla Kohen. No, Meiser Rishon can also go to a Kohen. After all, Kohen is from the tribe of Leviim. So Amor da Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah afla Kohen. So of course the Gemara points out, I don't understand. Still, it doesn't make sense because Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah doesn't say that it goes only to a Kohen. He just says that it goes also to a Kohen. So how in the world can you create a presumption of the fact that some person got Meiser Rishon, that somehow means that they're a Kohen? All it means is that they're a Levi. L'Kohen v'lo Levi miyamar. Where does anybody say that it goes to a Kohen and not to a Levi? So, and actually, yes, there is somebody who says that it goes to a Kohen and not to a Levi. And we again saw this also in Yevamot, that Basar de Kansinu Ezra, that Ezra was so upset that the Levium did not come back from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. So Ezra said that we're going to make it so that only the Kohanim get the Meiser Rishon, because they're the ones who came back, and presumably only the families that came back. But in any event, that's who was going to get Meiser Rishon from this point only. And so, now Tosfos notes in the first few words of the Tosfos Basar de Kansiu, it says Lo Ashkam Behedru Kra Bikra de Kansinu, that we never actually find in the Torah any specific citation to indicate that they are that this was a penalty that Ezra indicated, but then he goes on to note several places where it may be hinted to. All right, so Vidilma Ikru V'Yavule, 1 second, maybe it was a mistake and it was given by accident to a Levi. So how can you necessarily be sure that even after Ezra's decree, that if somebody received it, that they are a Kohen? So Rav Chisda Hacha b'mayaskim, and this is what we're talking about. Kagon de muchsaklan be'avua dehai de Kohen hu. We're talking about a situation where we knew that the person's father is a Kohen. V'nafak alei kala de ben gerusha ben chalutzahu. But we began to have, there was a rumor that maybe in fact this guy was a halal because he was a son of a divorcee or a chalutza, and so and who's also considered like a divorcee, and so as a result he does not have the Kohen status. He doesn't get the Trumas and Maisers. Yes, v'chalku leila didei Meiser b'beis garanos, and we're going to say that they were distributing it in the granary, meaning in a public location. So as a result, so Levi delav Levihu. So we know that this guy's not a Levi because his father is a Kohen. So he's not going to be subject to getting Meiser because he's a Levi. So my ikalamemar. So either Ben Grusha or Ben Chalutzo. So the only problem that he could potentially have is that he is either he's a halal because he's a son of a divorcee or a chalutza. So lomi by lamanda amar meiser rishon asur lazarim, and you don't even have to go so far as to say that there is an opinion that meiser rishon is prohibited to a Yisrael. Delo havu yavale, and so then of course they wouldn't give that if we in fact said so. Again, meiser rishon. So truma. We noted the fact that it has to be eaten in tahara. It has to be eaten tahar, and it has to be tahar. But that is not true with respect to Meiser Rishon. But there is an opinion that says that Meiser Rishon can only be eaten by a Levi. In fact, we paskin that no, Meiser Rishon can even be given by a Levi to a Yisrael, and they can eat it together. But in any event, the point is that there's an opinion that says that it could only be that it's not allowed to be eaten by Israel. And of course, according to that, you don't need to say that it's talking about somebody who says that Meiser Rishon is prohibited. Because otherwise they still wouldn't have given it to him. Ella afilu lamanda amar Meiser Rishon mutar lazarim. Even according to the one who says that Meiser Rishon is permitted to people who are not Kohanim, Hanimili lemispak lahu. That is talking about in order to give them to eat. Ababatoras chaluka lo yahavale. But you would never affirmatively give the Meiser Rishon to a Yisrael, and so as a result, they're not even in a formal distribution setting. such as a granary. So we're never going to assume that even Meiser Rishon will be given to anyone who is not a Kohen, because again, we're talking about in the post-Ezra era. So in this special case, we can assume that he is a Kohen. So the bottom line is that if in fact the person receives either Truma or Meiser, so then we can assume that he is a Kohen. Now, of course, nowadays we don't have that, so that's no longer a possibility. Okay, what did we say in the Brisa? So we also reference in the Brisa that you don't get if you are assigned Truma through a court system case, then you are not going to get the status of a Kohen. Well, lo havya chazaka, hecha havya chazaka. So once again, if you don't get it in Beis Din, meaning if Beis Din, a formal process, doesn't give you, doesn't give you credit for being a Kohen, how could you ever get credit for being a Kohen? So Amar of Sheshes Hachikamer. No, you have to understand what we're talking about when we say that it means that you can't get that you're getting the Truma in a court case. It doesn't mean that they're giving you Truma from a field. Rather, Hachikamer, this is what it's saying. Truma we're talking about a Yerusha, an inheritance. And the issue is following. So the point is that when you have, let's say, a Kohen who had two wives. One wife was a kosher woman, and she had three children, the other three sons. The other wife was a divorcee, and so as a result, her children with the Kohen are halalim, and so as a result, and she has two sons. So now the five of them are going to divide it up. Everybody, I guess the Bechor will get 2/6. Or 1/3, and everybody else will get 1/6. But what happens when the Chalalim get, and so the Chalalim will get a portion of the Truma that their father had? Well, Pshita, isn't that obvious? After all, a Chalal gets to inherit, so of course they're going to get some Truma. So Ma'od Tamim Dehanach La'achila, Hi Nami La'achila. I might have thought that because the three brothers who are kosher not only get to, can eat the Truma, so as a result, we won't give it to the other brother who might actually come to eat the Truma. So Kamash Malan, we won't say that, and Hanach La'achila, Haila Zabune, right? So that the three kosher brothers, they will get the Truma and they get to eat it. But the two who, in my example, are not kosher, they're halalim. So as a result, they will get it, but they will have to sell it to a kosher Kohen. Okay, so now we're ready to go back to our Mishnah. And in our Mishnah, we said, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein Malin L'chula Al Pi Eid Echad. We set up.
David, just
please,
one comment.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a chicken and an egg phenomenon. What comes first? Proof that you're a Kohen, or actions that show that you're getting the status of a Kohen? You know what I mean? He was getting Truma. Well, how was he getting Truma? He must have at some point proved that he was a Kohen. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know exactly what you mean. The answer is that I think it's clear that you follow the tradition in your family, and your family has a chazaka, and unless a voice comes out questioning that, so you'll be able to continue. So I think at least in this case it's pretty clear that we follow the chazaka first, and then only in the case of some concern arising do we say
that the come from. It's, you know what I mean? At some point, you had to show that you were a Kohen.
Well, I mean,
you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I think that most people within the Orthodox community will just answer that you Baruch Hashem, we have Kahuna all the way back to Aaron Cohen. So as a result, everybody's got a chazaka all the way back that far. So.
All right. You,
Now,
if you act, but it's if you act like a Kohen, that's what they're saying. If you act like a
correct.
Kohen, you are a Kohen.
That's exactly right.
Basically,
And indeed, I think that's the way, effectively we paskin today. We allow somebody to say that they're to come into shul and say that they're a Kohen and do duchen. Only if there's a rumor or something that suggests otherwise would we do any investigation. Now, of course, we don't have a truma doraisa today for sure. We don't have even we don't really do truma even derabanan that we would give to a Kohen. So they're the
idea though.
lower, but
You're doing actions that show you're a Kohen, that shows you're a Kohen.
correct, exactly.
It's a little, but
It's circular.
Circular, yes.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And it'll be interesting to see. God willing, we should be able to be privileged to see it. What happens when we try to, reinstate korbanot and all the rest? How are we going to do all that? But remember that at that moment in time, the incentive will be to say one is a Yisrael, because if you're a Yisrael, you're going to get a portion of the land of Israel, because presumably there'll be some kind of reapportionment. So the Kohanim and the Leviim will be stuck in certain cities, and so, I don't know that they give you a piece of Israel, but in any event. Okay, so back to our Mishnah. So our Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein Ma'alin L'Chahuna Al Pi Eid Echad. So we have the Tanakama referenced, one witness being sufficient. Now we've got sort of a redefinition of the machlokas, and we had three different opinions. Rabbi Yehuda says outright, one witness is not enough. Rabbi Lazar says, no, one witness is enough when there are no concerns. And then Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, one witness is enough. He didn't mention anything about concerns, implying that even with concerns, one witness would be enough. But that doesn't make any sense, according to the Gemara, where the Gemara is initially coming from, because if you have two people coming and saying that this person is a halal, so that and raising concerns, how can he enable one witness to outweigh two witnesses? So as a result, we're now going to try and understand what's the difference between Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Hainu Rabbi Lazar, that seems to be the same view as Rabbi Lazar. So even though it says Rabbi Eliezer in the Gemara, our Mishnah was Rabbi Lazar. I'm pretty sure. Let's just double check. But in any event, so that's who we're going back to. So in any event, so now the point is that so what's the difference? So we're going to give three approaches. The first one is going to be immediately rejected, and then we'll have two other approaches. The second approach, one opinion will say, I don't like that approach, and explain why, and then we'll offer a third approach. So maybe we could say that the difference is when there's one witness, so Rebbe Lazar will say, that raises concerns, so then Rebbe Lazar will say, you need two witnesses, but Rebbe Shimon ben Gamliel will say one witness is enough. But that's not going to be true, because and so let's read it inside. The Rebbe Lazar Savar are archad, that if in fact there's a challenge, it's valid even if there's one witness. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Savar are trained. No, you need two witnesses. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. However, we have a Rabbi Yochanan that says Divrei Hakol ein arar pachas b'shnayim. You can only raise a challenge with respect to a Kohen with two witnesses. So as a result, that shows that that can't be the distinction. Even Rabbi Lazar will say that it's not a valid challenge and one witness would be sufficient because there is considered no concerns without two witnesses. So this is what we're arguing about. We know again that the guy's father is definitely a Kohen. And we have now a rumor that this guy is a halal because he's the son of a divorcee or a chalutza. And so as a result, the court took him down. And now we have one witness who comes and says, oh, he's a good Kohen. he's qualified. So as a result, as we turn to Kavav Amabet, Va'askine, so the court then comes and says, okay, he's fine. Well, then Va'asu Beitrei, now we have two witnesses come, Va'amri ben Garushu ben Chalutzahu, who say that he is actually the child of a divorcee or a chalutza. And then, so now according to this view, he's a definite halal. And so now the court takes him down again. And now we have one additional witness that says that he is a Kohen. So we had rumor down, one witness up, two witnesses down, one witness up. Okay, so we got down, up. He started as a assumed Kohen. He went down, up. Okay,
no,
so now
res judicata here. I mean, like once the matter has been decided, they can reopen the case.
Yes, absolutely. There's no res judicata. In much of Judaism, and especially in personal status, because exactly. Well, we're going to get to the point that you're raising, which is sort of like what this is kind of a mockery, and which I think is probably implied in what Hanan was saying as well. So let's take a look. So everybody agrees that the two single witnesses will be allowed to combine, and we will see later that in fact not everybody agrees to that principle, but in any event, right now we're going to assume that two single witnesses who come and testify to the exact same thing, we will combine them. And what they're arguing about is the concern that we're making a mockery of this whole situation. So Tanakama Savar, Rebbe Lazar thinks, since we demoted him, lo maskin and we're not going to put him back to a Kohen based on the second single witness. Rather, we need at that point two additional witnesses in order to undermine the and effectively mean that there will be three witnesses in favor of him being a Kohen. And the reason that we require two witnesses to counteract the first set of two witnesses is because we're concerned for the court's honor and that it'll be a mockery. But Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel savar anan achtinan lei v'anan maskinan lei. We put him down, we can pick him up. So we're following a process. We're following a legitimate rule of law. We're everything is fine. So Rav Ashi, even if you had two witnesses testifying and then another two witnesses testifying, then Rebbe Lazar also should say that we don't elevate. But he's certainly right. If in fact the question is one of mockery, so then what's the difference between if one witness comes at the end or two witnesses come at the end? At the end of the day, there's an up, down, up process here, and that seems to be the problem. And so that still creates some kind of mockery. So Elam Rabashi offers now a third understanding of what the machlokas is between Rebbe Lazar and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So Amar Rabashi b'mitztarfin le'edus kamiflagi. So they're arguing about the concept of whether two single witnesses who come separately can be combined, right? Uplugda dahani tanai, and it's a machlokas of the following tanaim, the Tanya, because we learned in a brisa. Now, this brisa actually has two cases. The first case is not actually relevant. That's not where we're going to see this machlokas. But in the second case, we'll see the machlokas of whether or not two witnesses who come separately and testify to the same thing will be combined. Let's take a look at the first case. Again, we'll only look at it superficially because it isn't really relevant to our story, but in any event, we'll learn it because it's here. So Tanya, ein edusan mitzdarefes. You cannot have two witnesses be combined. Ad sheyiru shnehem ke'echad, until they both see exactly the same event. Okay, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Amar afilu b'zeh achar zeh. Even if they testify about seeing something on different days, but they saw the same thing. So I saw you lend $100 to James on Monday, and then Mark testifies that he saw you lend $100 to James on Tuesday. So we will combine those two testimonies according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Karka, because maybe they got confused or whatever. But the bottom line is that we're going to recognize that at the very minimum, two witnesses say that you owe $100 to James. So you may owe $200 to James, but we're going to at least say that you owe $100 to James for sure. So that is the first machlokas. But now we turn to the second machlokas, the one that is actually relevant to our case. So ve'ein a dusa miskayemes beveistin, and in addition, the testimony of two witnesses in Beit Din is not going to be established until they testify together, meaning they've got to be, everything's got to be exactly as one, meaning, and they testify at one time. Rabbi Nassan Omer, no, we can listen to them. Shomin dvarav shel zeh hayom b'kashiyavu chaveiro lemachar shomin dvarav. If we have one testify today and one testify tomorrow, we can combine them. After all, they're testifying to the same thing. And so that is the machlokes that is existing between Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar says that effectively we don't combine them. And so that's why if two witnesses come to raise a concern about a person's status as a Kohen, you will need two witnesses to come and say that he's a good Kohen. However, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says we will combine them. And so as a result, in the case where you had a rumor and then you had one witness come and then you had and say he was a good Kohen, and then you had two witnesses come and say he's not a good Kohen, and then you have the second good witness come and say he is a good Kohen, that second witness will combine with the first witness, and now that will eliminate essentially all the story, our entire story, and we will say that that is in fact enough to eliminate the rumor and the two Kohanim. Yes, he would have to testify that
one couldn't say I signed off, and the other could say I signed the truth.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer, but yes, it would certainly seem that way. It would certainly seem that way. Okay, so now we come to the next Mishnah, and we return from our topic, from our brief interlude with Kohanim, to the story of back to women who are imprisoned. So, but now we're going to change the status, change the nature of the imprisonment. Rather than being, held, taken a ransom, now we're talking about debtor's prison. Debtor's prison is going to be potentially different because the family of the debtor who's being imprisoned presumably, will feel differently, especially the husband will feel differently about a woman, his wife, if in fact she is violated. And so as a result, if you have a woman who is imprisoned at the hands of the idol worshippers, people who are not Jewish, so al yedei mamon, if it's because of a monetary question, so then muteris labala, when she gets released, she'll be able to go back to her husband. Now, there's a debate whether this, when it says she's able to go back to her husband, it's talking about her husband, the Yisrael, or her husband, the Kohen. Now, if it's referring to a Yisrael, then it would suggest that we are suspicious of the woman affirmatively desiring and being involved in the salacious activity that would happen in the prison. And so, although Rashi and Tosafos seem to suggest that that is the case, mostly based on the fact that Allah here is not qualified by saying a Kohen, the Ramban says that can't be. She is an ones, no matter what's going on in the prison. She is captive. We're not going to say that this is about, and so that this is about her misbehavior. As a result, the Ramban says that really we're talking about a Kohen, and I'll go forward in that line based on that. So Val Yadei Nefashos. However, if in fact she's in jail because of a potential capital crime, well, then the people don't care. It's not about a ransom, and therefore they aren't going to be concerned about what they do to her. And so as a result, Asur Labala, as a result, she'll be forbidden for her husband, again, the Kohen, because the Kohen is not allowed to go back to his wife. His wife's not allowed to go back to her husband if, in fact, she has marital relations while she is married to him. She had, and in any event, if she had marital relations with a non-Jew, even if she wasn't married to him, she would not be allowed to marry him from that point on. So, okay. So now we take a look in the Gemara. And so Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Amar Rav. So Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak is going to qualify this Mishnah based on who's overall in charge. So let's take a look. So Lo Shanu Ela Shiyad Yisrael Takifa Alov de Kochav. It's got to be a situation where the Jewish people are in charge. So it may be that this is a non-Jewishly run prison in the state of Israel, but overall the Jews have some ability over them. So, and therefore they are not likely to be, completely dismissive of the rights of the prisoners. However, if in fact the non-Jews have the upper hand, then even if it was about money, asur labala, she would be prohibited to her husband. And so we take a look at Rashi, Elashiyad, second line in the Gemara part of Rashi, Elashiyad Yisrael, and about 1, 2, 3, 6 lines up, Elashiyad Yisrael Takifa al ha'ovdei kokavim, v'yarayim la'asos shelo kedin shema yafsidu mamonam. So as a result, they will be afraid if the Jews are in charge. They'll be afraid that that they will lose their money if they don't act with her appropriately. But in fact, if they are the rulers, well, then they'll just demand their money anyway because they've got control of the entire system.
The idea, I say this, is that if they rape her, then they won't ransom her, or she'll be worth yet less in the
ransom market. Yes, the point is that they'll lose the underlying principle that they are owed. Meaning the point is that this is not about a ransom. This is not about illegal activity. This is the way the system worked until, the 19th century.
Okay, wait, so she's in debtor's prison.
Correct.
But they still have to ransom her, right?
Correct, exactly. They're going to have to pay the debt, but the point is that part of the legitimacy of that system is to not rape the people who are in the prison. If you rape the people in the prison, well, then you've undermined the incentives that you're trying to create of enabling people making people want to,
How is that?
Because
they won't try to ransom her out because she's been raped.
Potentially, that's
why is that?
Why? Because I think there's a stigma associated. There is
the husband still wants her back, I assume.
No, I think that's the point. Is that he especially if he's a Kohen, he can't marry her. So he won't want her back, and he won't have the incentive to try and bring her back.
But then that's the case in any ransom situation.
Yes, but the point is that here we're assuming that this is a ransom under, effectively under law, right? This is a legal ransom. So in a legal ransom, we're going to say that, because this is, we imagine, right, that this is being done on some level in a legitimate legal fashion.
And there was a general principle to try to get the people out who were ransomed, right? That's a mitzvah, right?
Yes, 100%,
Right?
100%. But the question is who's got the obligation, right? So if obviously the husband's got the obligation to ransom her, but no matter what,
Well, the
but
community to
what?
try and- wasn't
Yes,
it-
that's true too. But that's true too. But let's say that in the debtor's prison case, the point is that she owes the debt. So as a result, it could be more than the ransom is worth. She may be worth more than, if in a classic ransom situation, they'll take, a couple $100. But
Right.
if the debt is more significant, so then the way to ensure that the debt gets paid off is to protect the asset.
Yes.
She's the asset, exactly.
Oh, so it's the debtors who are, or the creditors who are basically kidnapping.
Holding her. Correct. That's exactly right. That's the assumption here, that this is a legitimate situation. And so, meaning the debtor, the creditors are going to want to make sure that the jail system that they set up to protect their assets is going to be successful in getting them the money that they're owed. And so as a result, they're going to want to make sure that that people aren't being treated improperly. Otherwise, they won't get their payment.
How could a woman owe a debt if she's like married? Doesn't all the property belong to her husband?
So presumably, so let's take a look at the next case, because we'll see a situation where that can happen. But in any event, the point is that she could have been an adult for several years and unmarried, and then she does have her own possessions. Okay, so Masiv Rava. So Rava challenges this and says, no, it doesn't make sense to say that in fact it makes a difference whether that even when when non-Jews are in control of the system, we can, if it's monetary, will allow her to return to her husband, because hey Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Rabbi Zachariah ben Hakatzav al Bas Yisrael Shehur Hana Ba'ashkelon. So we have Rabbi Yossi the Kohen and Zachariah ben Hakatzav. They were testifying about a certain woman that pledged herself in Ashkelon, meaning that she voluntarily chose to go into the debtor's prison. The Richakua b'nei mishpachta, and her family chose to abandon her, and they sort of distanced themselves from her. The Aideha me'idim osa shalom nistra v'shalom nitma'a. Even and witnesses came and said, no, she was not alone with them, and she was not in any way violated. And then, as a result of these witnesses coming, her family still did not take her back. And so as a result, the rabbis told her family, if you believe that she in fact pledged herself and as a result went into debtor's prison voluntarily, well, then you should believe her that she was not secluded and not violated. But if you don't believe these two witnesses who came and say that she was not secluded and not raped, well then al tamina shehora, and I don't believe that she was pledged. Meaning you're not supposed to be distancing yourself from her. She had done this and it was and is kosher, and you should not treat her otherwise. So v'ha Ashkelon ziyad ovdei kochavim takifa al atzman, and this is a place where Ashkelon was the non-Jews were in charge. Vikatani, and what was the situation as we turn to Kav Zayin Amud Aleph? The situation was Horhana in Nichbashalo. She pledged herself, i.e., she went in voluntarily. So that's why she needed two witnesses. Nichbasha, but if she had gone in involuntarily, well, then presumably she would not have needed two witnesses. So we see that even in a place where the idolaters were in power, if she was imprisoned against her will, well, then we'll assume that she's not violated. And that contradicts the statement of Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. So isn't that a counter proof? So the Gemara answers, no, it's not. Who hadin? What?
In meaning she was violated, and lo meaning she wasn't violated, the presumption?
No. In meaning she requires witnesses to make her to make her permitted, and lo meaning that she does not even require witnesses. Okay, so hu adin afil nichbasha. No, really, the same law applies for the pledge, meaning where she goes in voluntarily, and where she goes in involuntarily. And this is in fact just what happened. And so as a result, even though the story happens to be about a girl who pledged herself and went into jail voluntarily, the same rule would apply irrespective. And so the Ika de Amri, and now we're going to teach this same Mishnah, it's actually a Mishnah in Ediot Parachat Mishnah Bet, that in this same Mishnah is now going to be used as a proof for the statement of Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. So let's take a look. So Ika de Amri Amar Rava Afa Nan Nami Tanina. In fact, we have a Mishnah that supports what you just said, Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, that in fact what matters is whether the Jews are in charge or the Jews are not in charge. So again, remember that even if the Jews are not in charge, if you have two witnesses that say that she's okay, well then she'll be okay. But all right, so Afananamitanina, Ha'id Rabbi Yossi HaKohen Rabbi Zechariah ben Katzav al Bas Yisrael Shehur Hana the Ashkelon, again, same story. V'richakua b'nei mishpachta, and their family distanced her. Ve'ideh me'idim aleh shalonus the Ravalonitma, and again the two witnesses come. V'amru kachamim imatem ma'aminim shehur hana ha'aminu shalonus the Ravalonitma. V'mein atem ma'aminu shalonus the Ravalonitma al ta'aminu shehur hana. Again, what rabbis say is either believe everybody or don't believe anybody. But whatever you do, don't distance yourself from this poor girl who is in fact a kosher girl. So Ashkelon da al yedei mamon hava, and of course because it was in Ashkelon, we know that it was monetary. The taima, and yet what was the reason that she is considered kosher? To edim me'idim osa, because she had witnesses. Ha'ein edim me'idim osa, if she didn't have witnesses, so then she would not have been permitted. She would not have been permitted. So my love, lo shna horhana v'lo shna nechbasha. So and I would expect that it doesn't make a difference whether you're pledged or whether you're imprisoned against your will, doesn't make a difference. So as a result, this is a great proof to your statement, according to you, Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. And so the Gemara answers, no, it's not a proof. So in fact, it's not a proof in either direction. Lo, Horhana shiny. Maybe you could say that a pledged woman is different because she did it voluntarily. And so, and it's as if she is the property of the people. And so as a result, so maybe the bottom line is we can't use this Mishnah in Ediot to either, and cited by Rava, either to support Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak or to contradict Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. And Ika de Rami Lamirma. Now, there are some who actually use this Mishnah in a different way. So, and now we're going to go back to the original statement of Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. And people set up Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak's statement as a response to a potential contradiction between this Mishnah and our Mishnah. Tanan, because we learned in our Mishnah, al yedei, so Ika de Rami la Mirma, right? So there's some people who set up the following contradiction. Tanan, in our Mishnah, al yedei mama muteres levala, that if it's about monetary, if it's money, then she's permitted to her husband even without witnesses. Uraminu, but we have a contrasting Mishnah. Hey, Rabbi Yossi. Again, we won't go through it a third time, but Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Zechariah ben Akatzav, they testified about this woman in Ashkelon. V'ha Ashkelon v'al yedei mamon. Ashkelon would have been a monetary case. And what did we say? V'katani time de Edim me'idim osa. And the reason is that Edim were the ones who came and testified for her. So ha'ein Edim Midinosa low. But if in fact there had been no witnesses testifying on her behalf, well, then she would not have been believed. And as a result, she would have not been able to return to her husband, who, if he was a Kohen. And so doesn't that contradict our Mishnah, which said that as long as it's monetary, we will believe her? Umeshani, and so it was answered, Amar Rav Shmuel, Abar Rav Yitzchak, lo kashya, kanshi yad Yisrael takifa al ovdei kochavim, kanshi ein ovdei kochavim takifa al atzman. I'm sorry, kanshi yad ovdei kochavim takifa al atzman. So one place is where the Bnei Yisrael have the upper hand, and so when they have the upper hand, that's where a monetary matter will be such that will believe the girl, because the people won't want to violate her, and as a result will trust that she was okay. And Khan, in the Mishnah in Ediot, we're talking about where the non-Jews have the upper hand, and so as a result they will be less respectful in that situation, and so as a result it's not sufficient to trust her. We need two witnesses to come and say that in fact she was not alone and not violated.
If
And
she
so
knows, if the Goyim have the upper hand, why would she voluntarily go into debtor's prison? If the assumption is she's
yeah, I
going to pay.
mean, there are lots of reasons, but James called out that maybe her grandfather owed the money and she didn't think that her grandfather could stand being in debtor's prison. So she agreed to serve as the pledge for the debt. So
that's the idea, that she's like a pledge for the debt?
correct, exactly. She's voluntarily going in to be ransomed out.
It's not her debt. It's not her debt. Somebody else.
Doesn't have to be.
All right. Well, that's not a good grandfather, but okay.
Yes, I mean, you can just assume that it's her debt and that she's trusting on the rest of her family, but it's an interesting thing that her family ends up, and that can explain, right? Her family is like, we redeemed you, but we're not so thrilled about the fact that you went into such debt. Again, I can't help but think of sort of like mob related. Of course, mob related would not, I don't think that would be covered here, because then it would be criminal. And I think that the whole
I
point.
still don't understand how she's accumulating the debt if her property belongs to her husband.
Well, again, in this case, it's not clear that she had a husband.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, she would be prohibited to marry a future Cohen if she
Correct.
Not to go back to her current husband.
That's correct. In this case, and that's why I think it references her as a what did it call her initially? It called her a
So, but isn't her property belong to her father then? I mean,
Bas Yisrael. So I mean, they call her a Bas Yisrael. So again, it belongs to her father when she's under the age of 12. But once she reaches the age of majority, so then her work is hers. I'm sorry if I'm jumpy because of the internet says is unstable.
okay.
All right, wonderful to see you both. Have a wonderful day. We'll pick up with the next piece of the Gemara, Al Yadei Nefashos Asura, God willing, tomorrow. And again, we'll meet all through Thursday, both in person and on Zoom. On Friday, it will be only on Zoom. Have a great day.
Everyone, be well.